First Paw Media. You are listening to Mushing on First Paw Media. Visit our website at mushing.com.
Hello and welcome, everybody. This is Robert for the Burled Arch podcast, and I am joined by my co-host, Michele, and tonight we are covering the 2024 Iditarod. Michele, how's it going today?
It's going great, Robert.
So a lot is happening and not a lot is happening as well. We have a lot of teams taking their 24-hour rests, and there was some breaking news a couple of hours ago in regards to that crazy moose incident out on the trail. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But first, our standings. So we have Dallas Seavey working his way to Cripple, which is the halfway point. We'll talk about that as well. Jesse Holmes is almost 60 miles behind Dallas, who is resting in Ophir. Matt Failer, Jeff Dieter, Nicholas Petit, and Anna Barrington. And bringing up the rear, we have Bryce Mumford, Joshua Robbins, Jeff Reed, Connor McMahon, and Laura Eklund. So yeah, a lot of teams are out there taking their 24-hour break and, getting the rest that they need for those dogs and getting ready to move down the trail very soon. So let's talk a little bit about Cripple. Cripple is the halfway point for this year's Iditarod. This is the northern route. And at the halfway point, it looks like Dallas, as we speak, will pull into there and get the Dorothy Page Halfway Award, which is one of the major awards out on the Iditarod Trail. But he's also going to get some information when he arrives that he's going to find out that he doesn't have a 24-hour rest. He has a 26-hour rest. So let's jump right into that. So earlier this afternoon, a press release was issued by Iditarod, and it said that Dallas Seavey is going to be penalized for breaking Rule 34 for not dressing out the moose that we talked about, I guess it was 2 nights ago, there outside of Squintna and on his way to Finger Lake. So he has a 2-hour penalty for doing that. The rule specifically states that if you have to take care of a game animal, and those game animals are moose, bear, or buffalo, you have to take the time to dress it out properly, and that means removing all of its internal organs and making sure that it is ready to be processed for meat for people in the community. Evidently, he did not do that. The speculation is he was only there for about 10 minutes, and he was on his way down the trail. He did have a critically injured dog. He packed the dog in his sled, worked his way back towards Finger Lake, and ended up resting or camping, as they say, for about 3 hours between that moose encounter and when he arrived at Finger Lake. And there's been a lot of hubbub about that, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about what camping is in a little bit. But Michele, what did you think of this news when it broke this afternoon?
Well, just to clear a couple of things up based on what Iditarod dropped earlier, game animals are considered moose, caribou, and buffalo. They don't list bear, but I'm sure that's one of the ones that you would have to do this with per Fish and Game regulations here in Alaska. And they also note on here that as per Rule 34, it has been determined by the 3-panel people that is required. It has been determined that the animal, in this case, the moose, was not sufficiently gutted by the musher. By definition, gutting means taking out the intestines and other internal organs before cooking it. And therefore, it was determined by the panel unanimously that a 2-hour penalty will be assessed by the musher 24 hours later. One of my comments to our former co-host Tony Ryder earlier today was, I don't know how in the world you can field dress a moose in any sort of timely fashion with the equipment that the majority of the mushers carry in their sleds. They're not carrying proper hunting knives and skinning tools and the like. They are carrying, the majority of them, a knife that is typically under 6 inches in length. They have a Leatherman or multi-tool of some sort. They possibly have a handsaw for cutting down trees, but not necessarily for taking care of wild game. And they obviously, some of them have some sort of weapon. They also have an axe. Is that correct, Robert?
It is.
And typically that axe is about the length of my legs, so about 29 to 30 inches in length. That's a good swinging axe for, again, chopping wood. So those are the pieces of equipment that I believe Dallas most likely had on him, as well as any other dog musher out there. And just the mere fact, let's take Dallas out of this equation. I don't know that I could field dress a moose in under 20 minutes, let alone 10 minutes time. I don't know many people that could do that either. And I have a lot of friends and clients that are avid hunters. The last time I had to field dress any kind of animal, it was a rabbit when I was about 12 years old. And so I know how long that took me to do when I was that age. And I had directions being given to me. I had a very sharp knife, so on and so forth. So, I mean, I just don't know how it can happen in that time frame. Now, let's go back to the fact that the dog was unfortunately injured. There's a lot of speculation out there as to the type of injuries and how emergent it was and those types of speculations. I can tell you firsthand that we've had a dog trampled in our dog sled kennel by a moose that was wanting to bed down and give birth. And she had her hide completely filleted open, large enough that I probably could have put a basketball inside. She wasn't bleeding. She wasn't in distress because I was there. I picked her up, wrapped her up, and took her immediately to the vet. Obvious wounds were visible. She survived. Now, in Dallas's situation, I have no idea what the injuries looked like or what they were, but I'm guessing that he knew that the dog was injured, but not necessarily the level of the injury. Sometimes dogs can recover from said injuries fairly quickly if they didn't have any kind of gashes or lacerations, or in my dog's situation, had her hide completely gashed open. And so the dog may have not had any visible injuries. And he may have thought, I've got plenty of time to get this dog to be checked out at the next vet, where the next vet is at the next checkpoint, instead of going back to Squentna. Hindsight's 2020, everyone. And regardless of what your opinion is of Dallas, favorably or unfavorably, we just don't know.
So let's talk a little bit about what happens during an incident like this. So obviously he did dispatch the moose. It was trampling his team. As we said, it landed on his sled and injured one of his dogs. He packed up the dog, which is common ways of doing things out on the trail. If a dog is injured, that's the reason we have sled bags. And then he carried on down the trail. And a lot of people are asking, why didn't he turn around and go back to Squentna, which I believe was 18 miles behind him? And there's been a lot of talk. And from a musher's perspective, it is very difficult to turn around and go backwards on the trail, because now you are passing all of those teams one by one on a very narrow trail. And at this point, this is where you're starting to creep back up into the woods. So you're not on the wide open river like the first couple of checkpoints. Now you're back into the woods. So the trail is going to be much narrower. So he made the decision to move forward for several hours and decided to camp. Now, I think a lot of fans think camp means camp like we do as people, and that's not necessarily the case. When you are camping with your dog team, you are literally stopping to take care of your dogs. It's all about the dog chores, making sure that they're comfortable, well fed, rested, and looked over, and really just spending time with them. And mushers have a very strategic plan about how long they're going to camp and what they're going to do during these camps. It is noted that he took a 3-hour rest, which I would imagine was probably a little shorter than his typical camp, but he had to take care of those dogs. Injured dog or not, he still had 14 dogs or so. I don't know exactly what he had at that time, but he had 13 or 14 dogs on the line, and then he had the injured dog in the bag. Now, remember, this was in the middle of the night. I think it was at about 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that when this occurred. He was probably dealing with a little sleep deprivation. He was probably dealing with a heck of a adrenaline rush. He had to calm those dogs down. So camping was his best and his only option in terms of what he had to do to make sure that he could take care of himself and take care of his dog. So he had to do that regardless. Whether he would have turned around, and 18 miles at that pace would still have been at least a 2 or 3 hour run, and that does not include any issues on the trail or all of those head-on passes. And if he was way at the front of the pack at that point, he would have to pass at least 10, 15, maybe 20 teams working his way back to Squintna. So he arrived at, I believe it was Finger Lake, at about 8 o'clock in the morning. He reported what happened, and everything else kind of went from there. So, like we said, we're only reporting what we know. He, I don't believe, has been told yet. He will be told when he arrives in Cripple, which is the next checkpoint after this penalty has been assessed. So he will have to take a 26-hour rest plus any time differential, depending on where he started on Sunday, on the restart. So it will be a longer rest than is expected. Now, I'm sure people are thinking 2 hours is not that big a deal in a 1,000-mile, 10-day race or so. And I will tell you that 2 hours can make a huge difference. There have been many races that have been won by just a few hours. There was one race that was literally won by just a few seconds. So time is of the essence here. So do we agree with the ruling? I agree with the ruling if he did not dress the animal out like he was supposed to. He should have spent the time to do that. Yes, he had an injured dog. What I would have done, and of course I have not run Iditarod, and I'm not a hunter by any stretch of the imagination, I would have taken care of my dogs right there at the camp, in particular the injured dog, to the best of my ability. And as Michele said, it could have been a non-noticeable injury. All he had was his headlamp. Now, these headlamps are very bright and they work very well, but you can't see everything. So I would have taken care of that dog to the best of my abilities. I probably would have bedded my dogs down right there or a little bit down the trail, so it wouldn't have been all that chaos with the dead moose there. And then I would have gone back and did what I had to do with the moose. Now, again, we're thinking about hindsight, and we're thinking about not in the moment of being in the race and all of that. But I agree with the decision because he technically did break the rule, especially if he only spent about 10 minutes. And I guess he had an interview with the Insider, and he said, yep, I didn't do a very good job. So rules are rules. Michele, do you agree or disagree with the decision?
I agree with the decision, and I wholeheartedly understand the situation in all aspects of it, Robert. I mean, we've been lucky in all of the years that we've lived here in Alaska, and we've only had two problems with moose over our 15 years. And I know that you and our daughter Nicole have had moose encounters out on the trail. I know Nicole had one literally jump over her dog team, or that possibly could have been you.
That was me.
And so, I mean, it happens. And the last thing anybody wants to do is have to kill one of these animals. You want it to move along and get out of your way. But as we mentioned the other night, and I'm just going to leave it at this, that moose had already had encounters with at least two other mushers, Jesse Holmes and Wally Robinson, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Wally Robinson was after. So I guess when we reported on this the other night, Wally Robinson evidently ran over the moose after the fact. He was not ahead of Dallas at that point. So the moose was somewhere on the trail. Obviously, Dallas and Jesse were ahead of Wally, and I guess Jesse was the one that
punched it in the nose.
Yeah, had the encounter first, and then Dallas, and then Wally later.
So, and that brings up another point that some of our listeners who are very savvy with the rules are going to pick up on. It does say that if musher A kills the moose and has to field dress it, that any mushers that come along afterwards, they must stop, park, assist the musher in that field dressing, and then the musher that had to kill it is allowed to leave out first once everyone has field dressed the moose. And then they kind of just go out one by one as they came in, so to speak, and then the race ensues.
And I really like that part of the rule. I think that is the best of all scenarios. You should not I know it's a race. I know that there's money and all sorts of things at stake, but that's sportsmanship 101. If a fellow musher needs a hand, you should be giving them a hand. And I know that there are many, many stories about mushers helping out each other, but this is clearly stated in the rules that if this happens, you must help. And I'm curious why. I assume it's because there was only a 10-minute break there. I'm curious as to why nobody else stopped. And I'm curious, now this is more of a rhetorical question, but I'm curious what all of the other mushers thought, when, in particular, Wally Robinson, if he did in fact come upon it later and actually run over it. I wonder what they were thinking about this huge, probably close to 1,000-pound animal, literally in the middle of the trail, with blood and guts and everything all over the place. That had to have been one heck of a scene to come upon, right, Michele?
Of course it did, but that begs us to, again, speculate on the what ifs. If Dallas had just taken 30 minutes to field dress that moose, chances are Wally and whoever else was behind him, because I don't recall from the trackers, would have come upon it and helped him out.
Yeah, so we'll find out more when they talk to him at Cripple. I'm sure that he will have a lot to say about it. So this story will be developing. This was announced, like I think, about 2 or 3 o'clock Alaska time, and we are recording this at 6:30 right now. So we'll see what happens in the next few hours. Michele, anything else on this news of the day before we do the next thing?
I'm just going to pose this out there. The moose was known to be in the Squentna checkpoint vicinity, known by the checkpoint people, and it had been so known that word had gotten back to the morning of the restart, that there was a moose hanging out at Squentna. If it had been that known, I'm just wondering, playing a little bit of a devil's advocate here, could the Iditarod committee had sent someone out there to scare it away, maybe give it a couple of snow machine passes, maybe a air horn, something to get it out of the way of the trail. They knew it was there.
Yeah, but you can only do that for so long. And like we are in moose encounters that we've come by and scared them off with snow machines. And then, we'll run a team out an hour later and we'll see the same moose hanging around. For folks that don't know, especially in deep snow, moose like to travel down the trail because it's much easier transportation on a packed trail than it is through very deep snow, which is what we have this year. So it is very possible for it to have been scared off at one stretch or another. But you know how moose are. They will come back and do their thing. We've had them standing in our yard for hours. Just standing there eating the willow branches and all of that, and you can scream at them and bang pans and do all sorts of stuff, and they literally will not move. These guys are, I hate to say this, but they're big and stupid. They do not care about anything in the world other than eating.
That's correct, but I just wanted to put that little spin out there. So it looks like right this moment, Nick Petit has pulled up from his rest just outside of Over and is headed towards Cripple.
All right, guys, so we have something special for you. Michele did several interviews at the Willow Restart, and we're airing those over on our other feed, our mushing feed, but we're going to drop a few of these in our coverage throughout our Iditarod stories this couple of weeks, and we have Matt Hall. Hang on.
Good morning. I'm Michele Forto with Mushing Magazine, and I'm standing here with
Matt Hall.
Good morning, Matt. Are you excited about today's event?
I am. I'm super excited. So are the dogs. We got a nice cooler temps. It's above zero, but still chilly. You can see your breath in the air, and that's perfect for an Iditarod start.
And no wind here in Willow, as usual.
At the moment, we'll see when we get out there.
That's right. Now, have you been out on the trails out this way a lot doing training?
Not at all, actually. I'm mainly out of Two Rivers, so out of Fairbanks, and we did one training run, just a 10-mile little stretch-out run a couple days ago, but we did not make it to the Iditarod Trail during that. So no, we don't really know what's out there this year.
All right. Well, you know what? Last question for you. I like your sweater. It's super interesting.
Thank you.
This seems to be a new theme coming out. My husband Robert actually had one made as well. Who made your beautiful sweater?
This was gifted from Norway. It showed up one day in a package, and since then my wife Elke has got one as well as my parents. So it's a pretty good treat.
That is a good treat, and it's super bright and it's beautiful colors. He's got red, orange, and gray. So look out for Matt Hall's sweater. I think that he's going to give Dallas a run for his money this year, and we wish him luck on the trail.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it. A quick interview with Matt Hall. Michele is calling those her 90-second interview, and I think we have about 10 or 12 of those, and we're looking forward to airing some of those quick stories along the trail. So let's jump into our next segment, and that is what I am calling the second third of the race. It is very interesting that this year, since we have such a smaller field, that everybody has made their way through some of the toughest parts of the trail with the steps and the gorge and all of that, and less than 100 miles or so separates the first team from the last team. And I think that is really cool. So that means that everybody is doing their best out on the trail and making the best of what nature is throwing at them. And there was a great story today from Casey Grove. He's been reporting on Iditarod for many years, and he had a chance to come out and speak with 3 people for his story. The first one was Josh Robbins. He is a true rookie this year. He has never entered Iditarod before, and that's going to come into play here in just a second. But evidently he had a heck of a time with his sled and a errant stump. Evidently it ripped off his drag, and he had some EDC gear in his sled. He had some paracord or some type of rope, and he attached it to his drag to make sure he could make it back down the trail. And he said, it is not straight by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's going to hold up just fine. Another story from Casey, he spoke to Sean Williams. If you guys recall, a year or so, I guess it was last year, maybe the year before, Sean entered into Iditarod as a rookie, and he made it to 70 miles from Nome, and he had to push the button and gain snow machine support because he got caught in a really bad blizzard. So even though he was only 70 miles from the finish, he is still a rookie in this year's race because he did not finish. So he says in the story that it is much easier this time. He's just playing it day by day. He said he was white knuckling it the last time he ran through the burn and the gorge and all that. And this year it's just like driving the sled like another day. Another story was Erin Altimus, I believe is how you say it. She is dealing with a lot of dog psychology problems with her teams. She's having some real struggles getting her leaders to lead. And she had said in the story that has never been a problem before. And she's doing a heck of a lot of switching around, making sure this dog can lead. And maybe they will for a little while and she have to switch them back. And I tell you what, guys, this is one of the most agonizing aspects of long distance mushing. When you have leaders that do not want to lead and you're out there in the middle of nowhere and you're having to move dogs around, your star leader is not doing their job, and you have to bring up the second string quarterbacks, if you will, to see if they'll do it. And they'll do it for a little while, then you'll switch around, and it is just painstakingly agonizing to do that. I've scratched on several races for that very reason, because as they say, if a dog does not want to run, it's not going to run. But it looks like Erin has at least figured out this doggy psychology issue and is on her way down the trail. A lot of these guys have not taken their 24s, or they're taking their 24s now. So that will all come to a head here in the next day or so. So there'll be a lot of action, at least in terms of the standings overnight. And then we lead into the second third of the race. And as I mentioned last night, the second third is really from about Cripple and Ruby onward up to the coast. And that is where they're on the Yukon for a couple of 3 days. They're going through some of the more remote checkpoints like Ruby and Galena and Cowtag and Cripple and all of those places there. And there's, of course, a heck of a lot of history there, a lot of support, a lot of fanfare at some of those checkpoints, but they are literally on the river for a very long time. And we'll talk a lot more about that in the next couple of days, what it's like to be out there on that huge expanse of the Yukon. And then, of course, after that, they're going to make their way as a group and then onward towards the coast. So that is the news and notes for today. And we have a very cool interview for our Musher of the day. Let's play that. But before we do, Michele, who is our Musher profile of the night? We'll play the clip, then we'll talk about him.
Well, tonight is very special. I reached out to Larry Daugherty and I asked him if he would take a few minutes and help me have Calvin as one of my Musher profiles. And I got to tell you guys, Larry understood this assignment. This is exactly what I'm looking for. I send you some questions, albeit it's usually on Facebook Messenger. That's the easiest way to do it. And he popped out his voice memo recorder and recorded those messages to me so that we could just simply upload it right here. So you guys are in store for a treat where you're going to hear a little bit of the dad's perspective for his rookie son's Iditarod season. So the questions that I asked, because he didn't exactly repeat them, I wanted to know I wanted Larry to share a favorite memory of Calvin taking the reins. I wanted to know, what checkpoint is Calvin looking forward to arriving at? And what was your favorite checkpoint, Larry? And lastly, what is Calvin's must-have in the sled bag or on the trail with him? Give it a listen.
So my favorite memory, these are going to be from my perspective because obviously he's out on the trail, but my own favorite memory of Calvin taking the reins, per your first question, would be the junior Iditarod. It's been so cool to see Calvin and I have kind of a parallel journey. I started my mushing career with Jim Lanier and the Northern Whites Kennel, and Calvin was fortunate to do the same. Under the tutelage of Jim Lanier, he was able to prepare for the junior Iditarod. But just watching do this race, as a parent, all of the mixed emotions that you feel. These high school kids go out, and also as a musher, knowing what what can happen out there, but also having confidence that he's well trained and he'll be just fine. But just that day of the race, he went out into snow that, it was like blizzard conditions. I can't remember exactly how much snow fell, but I think it was 18 to 24 inches during the race that fell. Just tough conditions, but seeing him push through all of that and seeing him really blossom as a musher, all on his own out there. And, I got to go out to Yentna checkpoint, my wife and I did, and just seeing Calvin take care of his team, and be able to successfully finish that race as a high schooler. I think that was probably definitely a favorite memory of him taking the reins. As far as what checkpoint Calvin is looking forward to arriving at, I think he has the good fortune of just not, when Calvin and I would talk about the race, he really didn't want a lot of information about what was ahead. I think he just wanted to experience it fresh for the first time. I tried, of course, as a dad and a veteran of the race to sprinkle some advice in there. But he really wanted to go out and have his own fresh experience. And as a result, to be honest, I'm not sure he knows a lot about the checkpoints that are out there or what he's in for. I really believe that every checkpoint will be his favorite checkpoint. Your rookie run on the Iditarod is just so magical. It's a shame you only get one rookie run because it is just so awesome seeing all of that for the first time. I think that I'm excited for him to see a lot of places. The Yukon River by dog sled. And then that portion, the Caltag Portage, Old Women's Cabin. But I think what I'm the most excited for him to see is the coast. I just remember as a rookie, it is just so otherworldly being out there. Just so crazy seeing that for the first time. And it's just cemented in my brain forever. So can't wait to swap stories with him when he gets back and hear from his perspective what his favorite checkpoint would have been. Mine was always Elim, as far as my own favorite checkpoint. I just love that village, love where it's situated. Coming in and out of the village is always so beautiful, and then the people that were there were always so supportive. So as far as his must-have in his sled bag or on the trail with him, he has this Finnish candy called sukulaku that I know he's taken plenty of that out there. Of course, he's got 5-hour energies and a good supply of coffee. I think for Calvin, probably his biggest must-have is he's a real bookworm, and I know he's downloaded a whole bunch of books, and that really kind of propels him in the middle of the night. So probably books on his phone and his Finnish candy will keep him going. Anyway, thanks so much, and let me know if you need any other material.
So that was pretty dang cool that Dad is talking about his son out there. And if you recall, Larry Daugherty is an Iditarod veteran. He ran a team with Mitch Seavey's kennel a couple of years ago. And I know that Calvin was training really hard last year to get his qualifiers done down at Mitch's kennel. So very cool. But we want to share a little bit more about young Master Daugherty. What do you have for us?
You guys, Calvin is just absolutely a sweet kid, always smiling, always ready to go. In his bio, it says he loves the sport of mushing. That's the first sentence. It's all about the dogs for me, is the second sentence. I know that when I first discovered Calvin, I found a photograph of a sign that said Calvin and Dogs, DOGGS, written in the font for Calvin and Hobbes, which I thought was absolutely perfect. So Calvin has a Facebook page. He does not have a website that he lists on his bio, but on his Facebook page, where you guys can go find him, same way I did, Calvin Daugherty, he has a picture of himself with a couple of dogs. So it's not hard to pick him out, but I spied something just now. His dad shared a note on their Facebook page, and he says in there, this is his dad speaking again, that his last time in Roan was a total disaster. And he tells Calvin, welcome to Roan. The Dalzell Gorge is now in the rearview mirror. So I know that from a parent's perspective, when you send your youngster out in the backwoods of Alaska, it's a very daunting task to give them a kiss on their cheeks and send them on their way, trusting the 12 to 14 dogs they have, depending on which race they're competing in. For Nicole, Junior Iditarod was such a big deal because the Willow Junior are on trails she's familiar with right in our backyard. So when we sent her on her way on the Junior Iditarod, I was a nervous wreck. Here I was sending my kid out in the true wilderness, or what I considered the true wilderness, down the Corral Hill, out onto the river, and up the river to places unknown to me, literally until this year. I can only imagine that that's exactly how Larry has felt, and how relieved he was to know that Calvin had persevered and made it through some of Larry's own hardest parts of the trail.
So if you guys recall when we were talking about the Daughertys the other night, they do some really cool stuff in the off season. Larry is an Iditarod finisher, and he's also a cancer doctor, and he spends a lot of time, of course, helping others in the community, but he also does something in the off season where he takes people to Africa to climb Kilimanjaro. And I think they're doing it for various causes and that sort of thing. And I think, I may be mistaken here, but I think Calvin has gone on one of those expeditions as well. So a really cool family. If you look way back into our archives, you will find that episode that we did right after Larry Daugherty's run. I would love to hear that again. I think I'm going to go listen to it tomorrow to give myself a little bit of perspective. Because, yeah,
if you're going to do that, why don't you help out your fans and put a link to it on the mushing page?
I'll try to do that. So, yeah, as Michele said, sending your kid out there into the wilderness, whether they are 12 or 14 or 17 or 18 or however old Calvin is, it is a big deal. I'm sure that there are a lot of proud dad moments for sure. So before we go tonight, guys, I do have to make a correction. Last night I said that it is possible or could it be possible for mushers to combine their 24-hour rest with their 8-hour rest. And I think they were listening to us at that very moment, because the folks at Matt Failer's Facebook page very quickly posted that you cannot combine rest, the 24 and an 8. So that is the rule. So you can only do one of them at a time. So all of these folks that are doing their 24-hour rest right now, they still have that 8-hour rest somewhere on the Yukon, and that will come in the next few days. And then that last 8-hour rest for everybody in White Mountain. So what is to come? Of course, like we said a few times, a lot of people will have that first big hurdle over their shoulder, that 24-hour rest, and then they'll work their way to that second third. And what is really cool is here we are through some of the roughest part of the trail, and we have no scratches. I think that is very nice. I really like to see that. That exemplifies dog care and training and snow conditions and trail conditions and all sorts of stuff that you could really come into play there. But no scratches as of this moment. Now, I have to knock on wood here, because typically when we say that, right after our recording, we will get a press release from Iditarod that says so-and-so scratched. So hopefully that does not happen tonight. Remember, this is a 24-hour race, and we're only recording a very small portion of that, about 45 minutes or so in real time in the race. So before we go, Michele, I know that we're doing something different this year than we have in years past. Of course, we're doing a lot of coverage over on our Facebook page over at Mushing Magazine and mushing.com. We're posting several stories and lots of shares and all sorts of stuff there, but we're also following along on the Insider. At least you are, from a much more involved perspective than I am. So what do you think now that we're about 3 or 3.5 days or so into this? Do you like the coverage? Was it worth the $49?
Well, before I answer that question, I just want to give a shout out to the Failer family for keeping us honest. We do appreciate that, because you guys, we're only human. We can only ingest so much information in a day, and we do count on all of our listeners and fans near and far across the swamp or around the corner to keep us honest. So thank you for doing that. And as far as Iditarod Insider goes, this may have been the year to purchase it. I'm not on it as much as you are thinking that I am, but when I am on it, I'm able to easily find out information. I'm able to easily track down where the mushers are. I would like to say that the bios that the mushers offer, those are lacking, and that's not anyone's fault except for the mushers themselves. Dear mushers and all of their families, friends, and supporters that handle their Facebook pages and or any of their media, that bio is your number one way for self-promotion. If you only give us a little tiny bit and you don't give us even your website, that is failing yourself and your kennel. And I would implore you to please give us more. Spend a little bit of time and write something out. I would also suggest to Iditarod Insider to get them to do a voice memo like Larry did for us on our show tonight. That may be the way to go. Get these people to just talk, because whatever they're willing to share is how they gain more fans. So Larry Daugherty did it right. Calvin did not give us enough information on his bio. He could have at least given us a link to a website. Lauro Eklund, there was nothing in his bio. You guys can go look for yourselves. You don't have to be an insider to get that information. It's completely blank, except for he put a link to his website. That was really smart because it forced you to want to go look at his website to see what Lauro was all about.
And from a media perspective, or an SEO, search engine optimization speak, it is a great idea to put your web link on your bio. You will get a heck of a lot more traction and credibility, quote, on your website from Google and the search engine things. I know that's a little bit of how the sausage is made, but also being able to self-promote is a huge deal in today's social media landscape. So I know that is a little bit of a soapbox, but that is how we get our information that we share with you. So we will do our best to track stuff down as best as we possibly can. And with that, I think our time tonight is coming to an end. There has been a lot of action. As I said, a slow day, but not necessarily a slow day on Iditarod. So we will see you guys tomorrow. Goodbye.
Are you a fan of the great outdoors? Do you enjoy the thrill of speed and adventure? Then listen up. Introducing Mushing, your ultimate guide to the exciting world of dog-powered sports and mushing. Whether you're a seasoned musher or just starting out, Mushing has got you covered. Get ready to immerse yourself in captivating stories of incredible sled dog races, expert training tips from seasoned professionals, and gear reviews to help you make the right choices for your team. From the breathtaking landscapes of Alaska to the snowy trails of Scandinavia, Mushing takes you on a thrilling journey through the world of dog-powered sports. Don't miss out on the latest issue, packed with exclusive interviews with top mushers, in-depth articles on sled dog nutrition, and stunning photography that will transport you to the heart of the action. So whether you're dreaming of competing in the Iditarod or simply want to learn more about this incredible sport, Mushing is your go-to resource. Subscribe now and get ready to unleash your passion for mushing. Visit our website at mushing.com or find us on your favorite podcast platform. Mushing, where the spirit of adventure meets the power of the pack.